This is Optometrists Building Empires, and I'm your host, Ankit Patel. Each week, we'll explore the journey of multi-practice ownership and leadership in optometry. Join us for insights and strategies from the top minds in our field. This show is sponsored by My Business Care Team. My Business Care Team helps your office increase revenues, reduce costs, and reduce staffing headaches. Let's build your empire together. Today's guest is someone I've known for a couple of years, and I've got the utmost respect for his demeanor and his leadership style. And he's just a cool dude to hang out with. His wealth of experience from his time in roles across hospitals, small clinics, and the U.S. Army really brings a unique perspective to optometry. He's earned 4 medals while in the Army, including the National Defense Medal and the Army Service Medal. He's the owner and optometrist at Lake Lanier Eye Care and Eagle View Eye Care. Please welcome Dr. Derek Black. Derek, welcome.
Thanks. Glad to be on the show and glad to share my experiences with everybody.
So Derek, we'll jump into our favorite question. What was the most important thing that helped you build your empire?
Yeah, I mean, I thought about that one and there's no, one answer. A few things that came to mind for me was number one, relationships. Number two, actually was, I was kind of thinking about this, was my personal financial education. And then also just seizing opportunity. So, relationships, how we built our first location, Lake Lanier Eye Care. I was working as a associate in a private practice after my time in the Army here in the Atlanta area. And I reconnected with a classmate and, he was looking for help in his Costco clinic. And we started talking and, lo and behold, we both wanted to open a private practice. So that was relationship number one. And then we partnered up and that's how Lake Lanier Eye Care got off the ground. And, through that, I continued to kind of network. And every time we opened another location, which we've got now actually 3 locations, we've got our Costco sublease, we've got our main location, Lake Lanier Eye Care, and then we've got a third location, Eagle View Eye Care. It was important to have those key people in place when we opened that third location. Running our businesses, I wish I could do everything myself, but I just can't. So, we got to have good people in the office. And so, in order to open that third location, every rep that came in, I would always chat with them. And it was interesting. I kept hearing about this guy, Steve, down the street from a competitor. People would come in and, they would have problems with their glasses because the competitor down the street got bought out by private equity. And I kept hearing that name over and over. Steve, who's this guy? And they're like, well, that guy was the only one that could fit my glasses, And then, we needed a, full-time optician with experience in our optical. And, I was, hiring at that point, not finding good candidates and basically talked to a rep. All of a sudden, this guy, Steve, came up again. And I'm like, who is this? Do you have this person's number? Well, she did. And, we reached out and Steve's our optical manager, does a great job. He's got 30 years of experience. And just by, networking and keeping my ear to the ground and that kind of thing, we were able to get a really good experienced optical manager at our main location, which allowed me to kind of focus on opening our new location. And then at that new location, we networked and found another optician with 20 years of experience.
It sounds like relationships are important to you. As you're growing your empire, when you're going from 1 to 2 to 3, what was something that you ran into that you didn't expect?
There's a few things. I mean, one, I actually boiled it down to 2, maybe 3. We had a lot of billing issues. I didn't expect the difference in demographics at our third location. And then obviously staffing, So, as we were going, the billing aspect of it was challenging because we, went through multiple billing companies and, from my time, working before having my own practice, I thought I was pretty good at coding and I can know how to code for an exam, but I'd actually never done the billing aspect of it. And that is a big challenge. When we first started, I didn't even know what a CMS 1500 form was. So, about a year or 2 in, when my accounts receivable was just crazy because we didn't have a wrap on things, that was a challenge. But once we found the right people, we got that under control. And that allowed us to actually have steady revenue coming in to, do that third location. As far as demographics, I was just kind of shocked when we opened that third location. We didn't do anything different from our first location, but come to find out after being there now for about 2 years or so, the demographics in that area are just a little bit different. And so it's a different type of clinic and it's totally different from our main location. So that was a little bit of a challenge.
I've seen people who do I have folks that did Medicaid and high-end client clinics, folks that say, "Well, I'm only gonna have one type of clinic." So, it sounds like you almost have 3 different models with the Costco lease with, and your 2 offices being slightly different, patient bases.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. After my time in the military and and private practice, Costco sublease, every patient base is different, but they're like in the end they're all the same, and it just comes down they want a good quality exam and they want care. Now, as far as it coming down to the eyewear aspect of it, obviously that's the biggest difference between a sublease and a private practice. Those patients are more budget conscious, but when I really dug into the demographics and I found a good consultant who actually, would drive down by like zip code. And because when we opened that third location, I kept thinking to myself, we're not doing anything different here. Why are we not growing as fast?
What was the solution there? Like, can you give us a brief, like, quickly, like, what was the differentiator in demographic? Was it just average income? Was it insurance types? Like, what was the differentiator and how'd you deal with it?
I mean, the biggest demographic that I found that's helpful is average household income. And that's what I thought. So when I actually ran the numbers, that's just what it was. Because I mean, we still get people coming in who are, more of our tight target demographic, target clientele who's wanting really high quality eyewear. But we just see a lot more patients coming in, who, are like, hey, I want stuff that's, in my budget.
Just, yeah, whatever insurance covers, right? Like,
Exactly. Yeah. Well, and literally, I mean, it's like $40,000 difference between the average household income at our third
yeah.
location versus our first location. So that just made that connected the dots for me. Yeah.
What did you do? Do you do things differently at that office now, like to accommodate those patients because they are different needs than maybe the other one. So, what do you
Well,
do
I
differently
mean,
there?
actually, no. I mean, we decided, we're gonna. I want to do eye care the way I want to do eye care. One thing that that's crossed my mind is actually relocating that clinic to a different area. But I do like that clinic. So that I have not gotten a solution to right now, and that's kind of my main thing. I'm kind of looking to solve. But also, I also have to step back too because both of my clinics are only Lake Lanier. We're now going to be open about 4 years. Eagle View Eye Care at this third location, we're going to be open about 2.5 years. So it's like, we're still seeing organic growth. And it's like, I don't know if I can really, and that's the other question I have is like, when do I have to like actually pivot, right? When is it just like, hey, we got to get established in the community to have some organic growth,
Yeah, there's if the town is stagnant, I think they say about 5 years, 3 to 5 years to get to saturation. But if your towns are growing, which that I think they are with the ones you're in, you can just ride the wave of growth. Uh,
Yeah. Well, and Kate, that you're in the Atlanta area. This place is, I mean,
booming.
I've lived here my whole life. I don't think it ever stopped growing. So yeah, so it's a good state to be in.
Yeah, absolutely. So touch on the relationships a little bit more. Like, what does that mean to you? Like, you focus on relationships. I think a lot of people can say that, but can you give us an example of how you focus on relationships that you don't see other doctors do that might be different, or what does that mean to you? Focus on relationships.
Um, well, I mean, I just try to be as flexible as possible, and understand that I've worked since I was 13 years old, and I always think back to like my prior experience, and I'm like, well, what did I not like about this job? What did I not like about that job? And there's some little things that I think my employees appreciate, and talking to other private practices, and the traditional thing that I saw with other private practices is that hey, we pay an hourly wage, we don't do healthcare, there's no 401k here, it's just we're going to try to pay you a good top dollar hourly wage. Well, I think my employees appreciate the fact that we have like a healthcare reimbursement. They seem to appreciate that. A 401k is important to me, so we offer that benefit. We have PTO. I mean, I'm shocked when I talk to some business owners or other people or just colleagues, and they're like, "Well, I only got 1 week of PTO." I'm like, "Well, why would anybody want to work for you if you only get 1 week of PTO?" So we tier it. It's an earn as you go. If you've been with me for 3 years, you earn 3 weeks of vacation. But at the same point, I tell my employees, I'm just the other key I think with them, I'm just brutally honest with them. Like from the get go when I get them hired, I'm like, hey, you're gonna max out at 3 weeks of vacation. That's just how I run my company. You can't be away from my company more than 3 weeks. It just doesn't work for me. Um, so yeah, I mean, offering good benefits and just being honest. That's the what I like to do.
Well, you did mention you found some really good key employees through relationships, I think is what you mentioned. Like,
Relationships,
how
networking, yeah, yeah.
yeah, like, so you tell me a little bit about your networking secrets.
Yeah.
Or like, how does Derek do that? Like, how do you? Because I'm sure a lot of folks listening are like, I have that same challenge around staffing and finding the right people.
Yeah, so I mean, connecting and just you know anybody like my reps, like a lot of people, we love our frame reps. Some frame reps, not so much, but I try to make a connection and just keep talking with them. Anybody who walks in the front door, if I have time, I'm going to talk to him. So if it's like the industry reps kind of thing, and just kind of create that connection. And then actually, social media groups are really good. OD's on Facebook, OD's on finance. Heck, I think Ankin, I think that's probably how we met. I think I reached out to you through Facebook probably.
Think so.
And I've just been shocked at how useful those are when you have something. We're all hooked on social media, but I go there to for tips and tricks about how to run my business, and I'm talking directly with over thousands of my colleagues. So, they're willing to share their opinion. And I've connected with other optometrists that I'm always looking to help. So, they have different questions on these groups, and I just put myself out there and, help them out and just make that kind of connection and continue the kind of networking kind of. So, cause you never know where it's going to lead.
You're a very genuine person, right? So like I was mentioning in the intro, like you're one of the coolest people. Like you and I have hung out, like 'cause we both live in the Atlanta area. And so it's very like connecting with you is very genuine. I definitely feel why people can connect with you. See, so let's expand on that a little bit. So have you had some challenges? I think you briefly mentioned it, but staff costs for almost everyone has gone up. I'm
Mhm.
assuming it's the same for you all as well. And insurance has been flat or down for reimbursements. How are you dealing with those challenges? Like, which one of those do you find more challenging or less challenging, and how have you dealt with those?
Yeah. And just touching on your relationships of being genuine, that's kind of actually hard too with staffing too. Cause it's like, I try to be genuine, but you also got to be the boss too. So it's like, oh, wait, we got this rule. And then, you have these relationships with your staff and it's like, well, no, sorry, you've already used up your 3 weeks. I know it's October and you want to take more time off, but the answer is no, kind of thing. But as far as, and that's one of the challenges of staffing, right? And so that's where, my business care team comes in. And we've actually, we have your team answering phones over at our Costco clinic. We're gonna be adding on other services for the back end stuff. And it's really helped, more manage and kind of me not have to do the biggest thing I like about my business care team is your manager. I talk directly to your managing team. They manage the remote staff. That kind of helps take it off my plate. The whole managing. I mean, I do actually talk to our remote staff directly when I need to, but I work directly with your management staff, and I think that's different from any other type of anybody else that's doing the virtual assistant thing out there. That's what I appreciate about my business care team. It's how you manage your staff.
I
So
appreciate it. Thank you. Are there any other things that you're doing that might like are you doing things on like you mentioned reaching out to social media, trying to develop not a pool, but always putting good vibes out in the universe. So when you do need someone to pull in, are there anything like how are you sourcing people, vetting people? Like what are some of your other things that you're doing for helping on staff costs or the billing side? How are you managing the billing side? Like that people might some tricks and just some things that people may not know that you're doing.
yeah, so I'll kind of go a little bit deeper into my billing saga. I call it. We first started off. We started with one billing company, and and it kind of goes back to the main thing is having systems in place and having checks and balances. But we hired a billing company. Everybody thinks you can just let the billing company do everything. Well, I first learned that you have to kind of oversee the billing company. Our accounts receivable got way out of control. Our first billing company, it was a husband and wife team, and they were great. I mean, every time I had an issue, I talked to them. I learned a ton from them. He he said that I could bill my VSP through Apex, and I was like, okay, Apex Clearinghouse VSP, that sounds great. That'd just be easier with our EHR system. You just click a button, send it. You don't have to go on VSP's website. No problem. So I wasn't really looking, and that was the other thing too. So there's the billing, sending the bill, but then there's a whole other thing of accounts receivable, right? And that was an education for me. It's like once I really understood my accounts receivable and I pulled it up and I looked at it and I'm like, man, I'm going to get this under control. But anyway, so then like 3 months later, those claims were not going through, and we had probably a month or two of VSP claims that never went through. And so, having that relationship with this billing company, he immediately caught the mistake. He was super apologetic about it, but unfortunately, there was a lot of those claims didn't get paid on, and it was a significant amount, right? And so, because we had that good relationship, he basically said, "Hey, you know what? I've got your back. I got you covered." He ended up doing billing work for us for a while to kind of make up for it. And I'd still recommend them to this day. It was an honest mistake, but that kind of comes down to me. It's like, well, I should have been looking over the AR. We should have caught that error immediately, not
Yeah.
2 or 3 months down the road,
And that's something I always tell folks because we have the similar challenges at our offices is that
Mhm.
um, the whole trust but verify, right? How do you
Yep.
measure folks' success in those areas? So when we try something new, we always do fire BBs before we buy fire cannons. So what we'll say is like if we're switching systems, like okay, we're going to test it for 3 or 4 claims. We're going to wait till they come back and get paid on it before we go live with this. And so we'll do a little test like that to make sure. And if it doesn't work, then we fix it and move on. That's helped us save a lot of headaches. That's definitely been from mistakes. We've made similar mistakes like that in the past. So it's been a tough thing to
Yeah.
manage sometimes.
And that was kind of an eye opener for me when I first opened my practices. Because even when I got into private practice, I'm just like, oh, I'd see something working at my other jobs, and I'm like, well, I just hire somebody to do that, right? They'll get it done. It's like, well, you can't just hire someone and just expect it to do it. Like you got to kind of look over their shoulder. You can't micromanage, but you can't expect things to get done. And I've actually heard horror stories about people, trusting a manager, and then lo and behold, 2 or 3 years later, where's your money, kind of thing. So, yeah, you got to trust and verify your people.
Yeah, we had that same sort of horror story with a couple of managers actually. So it was
Yeah,
definitely a learning experience for us. So
yep.
what keeps you up at night right now? Like, what is it? Some of the biggest challenges that you're facing right now, or some of the things that are just like, ah, this is a tough problem that I'm working on right now.
Um, you know, I really enjoy private practice. There's nothing about the private practices now because I mean, during the first, we're in like right now, I've got a good, staffing. Staffing can keep you up at night. Luckily, I finally have got a great team. So that's not keeping me up at night. Actually, the one thing that really came to mind is kind of what I call the threat of big optical. I'm a young business owner and I've got another 20 to 40 years ahead of me. And every time I look at what's going on with vision plans and the direction of, I point out to optical companies. I mean, they're in the business of selling eyeglasses, right? And so we're in the business. Yes, we sell eyewear and contacts and that kind of thing. But my biggest thing is patient care and vision care. And I think that big optical is kind of, I don't know if they're really focusing on that. That kind of worries me a little bit. So
Yeah, it's interesting. It's good. I think it bodes well for the future of the industry for private practice because there's that area that's still not being serviced well outside of private practice.
well, and that's what makes private practice different is because there's still, and that's why it doesn't really keep me up at night. I mean, what I've learned about private practice too is that I just love the fact that people are coming to see me because they want to see me and my staff and my partners and get really good eye care, not just a pair of glasses. So.
Exactly. So what are you excited about for the future? I think you kind of touched on a little bit with that. What else excites you about the future of either optometry, your businesses?
Just seeing the growth of the practices. I mean, the that third location we kind of seized an opportunity, and I like having the challenge. I thought that third location actually was also another good story. I mean, there was actually a private equity group working out of that third location. And so, they moved out and we kind of immediately seized the opportunity. We're like, well, there's a clinic up there that's already built out. We just got to put some equipment in there and we see patients. We got optometry. And in my mind, I'm like, there's a patient base there. And, so, but then, now we're about 2.5 years into it. It's like, well, the patient base isn't quite there because this private equity firm has a location that's kind of close.
Yeah.
And so the growth hasn't been what I expected, but at the same point, we're still growing. And so just having that challenge of like, how am I going to do this? And we were talking about earlier, am I going to relocate? Are we going to kind of switch how we do things? That kind of thing. But again, I get excited about like doing all these things in the businesses, but I also have to reel myself back and realize like, there's other things in life. And, I think I've got some pretty good structure going on, and, we just kind of let those go and see where it kind of takes us before we really change anything. So yeah, I mean, around the businesses and growing them is just exciting. I feel like I'm still like the very beginning of my private practice kind of journey.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got a whole career ahead of you.
Yeah.
So we're gonna change gears a little bit.
Sure.
You talked a lot about like the drive you have, right? Being opportunistic and not opportunistic, but you seize opportunities in front of you. And so let's do a little bit of time traveling. Can you point to maybe like 2 to 4 a couple of times in your life where you felt like, "Oh, you know what? This is why I developed that mindset. I think this really helped me develop this drive." It could be 6 years old, had a lemonade stand. That's the example that I use, or it could be a class in college or anything in between. So if you can think of like 2 or 3 different times in your life where you're like, "You know what? I think that really was instrumental in helping me build that drive." Can you kind of tell us a couple of stories?
Yeah. So I mean, like the drive to kind of, get into private practice and start my own business was it was a couple things. So my time in the army, coming out of school, I was fortunate enough I got a scholarship that paid for optometry school, and then I got to serve in the army for 3 years, and I love that experience. And seeing how things worked in military medicine and the good and bad, just kind of drove me to want to kind of be my own boss. I liked working directly with the patients when I was in military optometry. And I still, again, I thought it was a fantastic experience. I loved every moment of it. But what kind of I didn't like was realizing that the army is kind of a big bureaucracy, and that just I saw the inner workings of it, and it was something that if you worked for it doesn't matter. I mean, you can compare this to, you can call it the army, you can call it IBM, you can call it Google, Apple, whatever. It's just that kind of corporate kind of environment, right? And so if you're going to have a corporate type career, you got to play kind of a corporate type game. And the army had a little bit of that. And, I didn't like that aspect. I love the patient care aspect of it. And so I really stepped back. I'm like, okay, well, if it wasn't for that, I probably would stay in the army for like 20 years, but, or more. I mean, I really like seeing the patients, but I'm like, I really want to have more autonomy, and I want to just kind of do my own thing. So, and then also I kind of started digging into the numbers and started reading more about, insurance and reimbursement. I'm like, wait a second, I'm seeing this many patients per day with this reimbursement. You start looking at different things, and that's where I got really intrigued with private practice. So then the other point is when I got out of the military, I started working in a private practice, which I also really enjoyed. I learned a lot. And, you know, they were open on Saturdays. And after about 3 years of working Saturdays, and then also, I still remember, I had to rearrange my schedule, basically I couldn't get off for my child's first birthday party. And it was like, I'm going to work on Saturday, right? And I think this resonates with all of us optometrists because I mean, patients do need patient cares on Saturday, but to kind of like that was kind of a thing to me saying like, okay, so I'm at this point in my career, is this what I'm going to do from here on out? I mean, and I know a lot of docs, they don't mind working Saturdays, but weekends were important to me. So I finally was like, you know what? The only way I'm going to actually have control and freedom over my schedule is to be my own boss and open my own practice. And that's kind of what propelled me into being, pursuing, private practice and into that field.
Yeah, that's cool. I think a lot of folks have. I have a very similar origin story too of why I went into business. So I
Yeah.
had definitely had a bad experience. Well, not a bad experience, but definitely an eye-opening experience at a large corporation. So that was
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah. It's different. I mean, just, it's not, there's nothing like just working for yourself, that's just, that's why I enjoy it so much. And, looking forward to kind of getting better and building what I've got and everything. So,
So why grow it? Why go from 1 to 3, right? Or 3 locations, 2, 3, depending on how you define it. 1 lease plus 2 locations. Why keep growing and why not stick with 1? Like, what was that reasoning for you? Like, what makes you tick and why that?
um, well, I mean, the third location was kind of like an opportunity. And because of the slow growth of that third location, I'm like, do I want three locations? So who knows? That might change, in the future. But also, the other thing as far as relationships, like me and my first partner, we actually brought in another partner, so we got three partners. So having three locations just kind of makes sense for us all to work in. And again, it goes back to kind of controlling my own kind of schedule kind of thing. It's like if I had just one location, I'd have to be there, 5 days a week, maybe four and a half. I know there's different structures you can have it, but it's all on you, right? So having multiple locations, partnering with people, with my partners, like if I go on vacation, I've got coverage, and with multiple locations, I can see once we get to the level we want, it's just not only are we going to have more revenue, but it's just going to be, I think it's going to afford a better lifestyle for all of us, not just my partners, but also the staff and everybody. So that's kind of how I wanted to kind of grow to multiple locations.
Yeah, it was interesting. We came to it similar way. It was also like just defensive. Like there was so much consolidation. It's hard to be. You don't get like you don't get the buying power to stay competitive on pricing unless you have some
Yeah.
volume.
Yeah, and
And
I always hear this thing. I don't really know if I really understand it, but they say economies of scale, and it kind of makes sense to me. It's like when you grow, it's like, and there was a there was a good book I read. I think it's called Simple Numbers, Straight Talk. You know what book I'm talking about?
oh, Greg Crabtree, I know that well.
Yeah, yeah. And so there's something that resonated to me. He calls being between 1 million and 5 million in revenue the black hole of
Uh,
business.
3 to 5, I think is
Three,
specific.
was
Specifically
that?
3 to
Yeah,
5 is a black hole. Yeah,
yeah,
that's a tough
yeah.
one. That past that 5, it gets a little bit different. But yeah,
Yeah, when I first read that, it didn't make quite sense. But then after that, I'm like, wait a second. If you're 5 million in revenue and you've got multiple locations, then let's say one location is not doing that great. Like you're big enough that you're not gonna just fold kind of thing. And you can, when you lose that key staff member, you've probably got a good runway to hire somebody on to make sure you get the right person there kind of thing. So
yeah, yeah. It changes who you can bring on board when you get bigger. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's almost in some aspects, I think having multiple locations, like in long term, might make things a little easier. You know.
makes sense. So anything else you'd like to know? Share with folks like what do you do for fun outside of work? What are your hobbies? I know a lot of business owners. It's work, but what else do you do besides
Yeah,
work?
well, I've got 2 small kids, 4 and 7 years old, and so, very involved with them, and now that they're old enough, I'm coaching softball currently and taking my girls to gymnastics, and when we can on the weekends, we like to go up to the North Georgia mountains, go do some hiking. Not, I don't have any crazy activities, but yeah, I mean, now that I've got that time, it's focused on family and spending time with family, so, and, like anyone with small children, it's like their hobbies are now my hobbies. So
Yeah,
you know, so but yeah, that's what keeps me busy.
I know the feeling. So, any other words of wisdom or any insights that you'd like to share with the audience?
Words of wisdom, insights. I really love our profession, and you can really do a lot. And there's a really good outlook. And people talk about medical optometry. I'm a big proponent of that. So anybody who's not doing full scope optometry, and I feel like that's another big thing that's helped us grow the private practices. I know in the past you could open up and just sell eyewear and contacts, but if we didn't have the medical aspect of doing dry eye treatments and myopia control management, that kind of thing, that's slowly becoming big revenue producers in our industry.
Yeah,
So make sure you're not neglecting that. I know it's not everybody's forte either. So if you don't want to do that kind of stuff, you don't have to. There's a lot of different ways to do optometry, but the future is definitely bright.
I've always viewed it as a win-win-win, right? It's a win for the patient because they're getting care that they wouldn't normally get. It's preventative or proactive. It's a win for the business, win for staff and doctors too, because you get to practice how you want to practice. So
Oh yeah, yeah. You treat the patient right, and then everything else falls into place. So for sure.
cool. Well, thanks again, Dr. Black. So we will put in show notes how to get in touch with you. I have your LinkedIn, your company website, which is lakelineareyecare.com, your Facebook link, and then your email as Dr. Black at lakelineareyecare.com. Is there anywhere else that people can find you, or are you good with those venues?
Yeah, that you send me a message on Facebook. I'm on there too much. So, and if anybody ever wants my opinion or help on anything, I've actually reached out to probably about 4 or 5 different colleagues, and it's not like I'm doing consulting or anything, but I'm always ready to help and make those connections with our colleagues and help wherever I can. So yeah, contact me about anything you want.
I appreciate it. Thank you. So thank you again, Dr. Derek Black.
Thanks for having me on. It was great. I appreciate it.
And thank you again, audience. If you learned something today, laughed, or just found some insights, please share the podcast or the video with your friends and family and everyone you know. So thanks again, Dr. Black. And this has been another exciting episode of Optometrists Building Empires. See you next time. That's a wrap on another episode of Optometrists Building Empires. Thanks for joining. For show notes and more, visit buildingempires.live. This show is proudly sponsored by My Business Care Team. My Business Care Team was born out of staffing challenges my wife and I faced together, managing multiple optometry locations. We refined our approach at Classic Vision Care and now offer our expertise to others. If you're experiencing challenges with staffing and you'd like to set up a discovery call, we'd be happy to help you and connect you with the right resources. We'll see you next time.